Pseudomod is a Half-Life 2 mod made by Zebra Jack. Jack reached out to me back in August with his mod, and it was a coincidence because around that time I was actually working on covering it. But unfortunately, I had spine issues, I got sick, and the video was left unfinished. But here we are, and I promised Jack I'd take a look at his mod. Jack has almost 10 years of experience with making maps, and in the last 2 years he was working on this mod. Now, before I get into the details of it all, I really did enjoy this mod. It's one of those moments where I can't find the right words, but I'll try. You see, the mod provides a very immersive experience. It drags you into its world and you'll enjoy every second of it. If I were to make a comparison, I'd say this is a sort of like a spiritual successor to Mistake of Pythagoras, but less crazy and much more polished. The mod is quite lengthy and will take you about 2 to 3 hours to finish if you play it at a normal pace and not rush. It does a great job at keeping itself fresh and interesting all the way through. Now that's a major quality. The levels themselves. Sure, for a Half-Life 2 mod in 2022, it might not have the fancy bells and whistles in the visual department, but the maps do look good. At a glance, they look professionally made, but in very rare cases, you'll see some disproportionate architecture or maybe some texture size issues, but nothing too major, nothing that is a deal breaker. The locations of the maps vary from chapter to chapter, and because of this, you'll always be seeing something new, like horror-themed maps, caves, labs, warehouses, combine bases, prisons, and hell, even outer space. To give you a rough idea, instead of action, I would classify this mod as an adventure mod, because it's one hell of an adventure. One of my favorite sections was the acid trip we have after consuming some mushrooms. I absolutely loved this gravity changing sequence. It was just awesome to see it happen in the source engine. The mod has about 18 chapters and each of them has a personality of its own. Of course, the 18th chapter is the credits chapter, so we can't count that, but the other 17 are just diverse enough to keep you hooked onto the mod. While visually it might not be something to write home about, it's the overall experience you have with the mod that makes it worth the time. Apart from some handful of locations, most of the mod flows through so smoothly and is paced very well. No doubt, it was very fun to play. In my playthrough, from start to finish, I had this odd sense of wonder. I kept thinking about what else will this mod throw at me? And that's because it does these sequential events where the next thing is even crazier from the last one. Like, a quick spoiler, you start off from the city in the mod and end up in space. So imagine what kind of things happen in between. My main focus on this mod is the gameplay, the design of it all. I'd say this is one of the most polished mods I've played in terms of gameplay. No puzzle is too difficult, no boss fight is neither easy or hard, and no encounter is impossible. However, the only drawback I have, and I think a lot of players will have this too, is that the mod in some maps has a point where you just get stuck. This happens in every other chapter, like it's not apparent what you have to do, so you mess around and around, waste 5 to 10 minutes, and then in frustration, you no-clip. I did it too. Vehicle sections are something that I think many people struggle with when making a mod. They are either too boring or too difficult, too long or too short. While the scout car section in this mod was okay, the airboat section was absolutely fantastic. Granted, it's not as special as water hazard or the water hazard section in Raising the Bar that we looked at in the previous video, but it is very good, and it does attempt to make it special with all these sequences of boats moving around and all sorts of crap happening on screen. It's very exciting. One of the main proponents that kept me playing the mod was the different locales you get to go through. A change of scenery every 10 or 20 minutes played a big part in wanting me to keep going. Usually if I'm checking out a mod, and if it's 2 hours of a generic Black Mesa-like lab or tunnels, I just get bored and quit. I don't want to look at the same thing for 2 hours. That, and the way the maps look, almost in the same vein as Mistake of Pythagoras, had a charm that I just couldn't ignore. And that's pretty much it. I would talk about the quote-unquote story or what happens in the mods in each of the chapter, but I highly recommend that you check it out for yourself. You won't be disappointed. So, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Thank you for watching, and a big thanks to these members for supporting the channel: Hawk Assault, Cop Fighter, Jason, Mr. Spaban, TTG, Winter, Alien Grunt, Mark Jellin, A Normal Street Lamp, Klaus, T-Boy301, HL1+1, TRR Droid, The Hazardous Memer, Bipolit the Fighter, Forgotten, and Skyclad. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.